I was just gonna wait and do a video for you when Justin and Aaron got here, but it seems like the dogs are going, I think, a day early or something like that. So I thought of just doing it like this, and it might be easier for me just to upload it onto my computer. So who knows? So earlier, I fed them papaya. I fed them a whole big papaya. Around this big, super big, a little bit bigger than my face. I'd probably give at least two of these to the three of them in one day, right? If I'm just gonna feed papaya. But today I also have this. So I fed them around 10, 20, something like that. I'm probably gonna give this to them around 2. So I want to keep within a 8-hour window of feeding at least. And then 6-hour to 4-hour window is even healthier. Because again, the less digestion that is going on within the dog, the more healing, right? So let's see. And the reason for kind of separating it, and the papaya and the banana, is that when the dog has a chance to focus on the digestion, to focus on the enzymes, right? Then the digestion can happen much, much faster, right? So that's why even for meat, right, we want to separate the days as much as possible, because what that'll do is allow for no fermentation. And this is the biggest thing. This is probably the most important thing, is fermentation. Because if there is no fermentation, then there's very little chance for acidosis. Because that's the thing. Eating the wrong things at the wrong time and putting different food groups together, again, that's the worst case. That's the only problem with the barf diet. Everything else in the barf diet is great. The raw foods, all of this, right? And of course, people don't know much about hybrids, so you can't blame them. But other than mixing foods, barf is on the right track, but they mix foods. So Lauren from the Rocky, with that 2-hour great video, she'll go into the fact how the hair and stuff won't grow back if they're still fermenting on different food groups, even if it's all raw. So that's one of the biggest, I guess, secrets that I've taken from Lauren, was that the no fermentation is the key to a healthy dog. And at the same time, let's see. So you limit back the feeding hour, because again, digestion. So too much digestion or too much effort in digestion constantly without any rest is the reason for disease, is the reason for the lack of healing. So even though you might not see symptoms right away, the healing is being prolonged further. It's like procrastinating homework further and further, the body work further and further. And eventually things just collapse. Whereas if you are constantly in fasting mode, it's this exact same as humans. Funny enough, there's so many similarities, right? Healing is the same. Healing is a matter of nothing. And then an occasional, because I always let them graze on grass and stuff, right? They're always chewing it and taking what they need or taking what they don't need, or sorry, not taking what they don't need. And you see what I'm saying? So this kind of stuff. But again, the key is that when the digestion stops, that's when the healing begins. Because really homeostasis is championed when there is no food in the body or very little food. And that's why fruit days are so amazing for the dogs, because they're basically you can just look at them as hydration days, right? With of course, simple sugars or whatever they're called, fructose, right? But again, this is why we fast after the meat days, at least one day, 2 days would be ideal if you're doing long meat days, like if you're doing multiple meat days, right? And reason being, again, meat moves much slower in the organism, right? And meat really slows down the organism. So I'm of the believer so far, right? This belief could be changed, but I'm of the believer so far that dogs are omnivores for a reason, right? I'm of the believer that there's something, whether it's their teeth, whether it's their shorter intestines, just biologically, anatomically speaking, there's something weird to me when we say they don't need meat at all. They probably need much less meat than, for instance, cats. That's for certain. But I do still think dogs need some. And maybe in the future we can come up with some scientific, right, beyond beef solution for the dogs. Who knows, right? But until then, they need bone because they need the calcium from the bone. Unlike humans, they can't take calcium from the bone. Dogs can, right? And at the same time, or humans take very little or need to be starving. But anyhow, dogs, that bone is alkaline. That bone marrow, that all that good stuff inside, right? But the blood is acidic. That's why Sebi always bashes on blood, on people eating meat and stuff, because he calls it blood. Why are you eating blood? And he's making it very apparent that we're not vampires. We don't have teeth, It's not like dogs. It might be slightly longer, but it's not like protruding to the lower, So it's these kinds of things. Dogs have that, which means that some part of them is meant to rip and gulp meat. So really rip up things quickly and then just, pass it through real quick in chunks. Because herbivores do the opposite. They do no chunks because they're doing, vegetables. And with vegetables, it's much harder to digest. So they have multiple stomachs. They have large stomachs, really long, right? It takes a long time if you think of like horses and cows and stuff. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. And they're always eating throughout the whole day. That's the other thing, is that what fruit allows you to do is you don't have to eat the whole day. There's a lot of energy exchange going on already, just in a few seconds. And it's quickly absorbed. That's why it's also good for dogs. And it can be 30 to 80% of their diet. Fruit can be. So yeah, and wolves and stuff too. And that's the other thing, is really the dog diet is just about returning to nature, right? That in nature, we can call preparation steaming instead of cooking, and we can do all these things, right? But in nature, dogs don't have any preparation. They don't have any kibble. No one is cooking and processing and mixing food groups for these dogs. No one. So of course, we can make excuses that the dogs are, again, already hybrid, and the dogs are, bound to a life of unhealthiness because they're domesticated, genetically speaking. But it's the same argument with human beings, right? Just because you have genetic illnesses doesn't mean they're irreversible. The genetic illnesses are only expressed and shown, and the phenotype only comes out in these acidic situations. So the moment you can feed them a natural diet and return to nature, the higher the chance is for these dogs to reverse their genetic shortcomings, right? And again, big thing there is less digestion. And this is another key thing that you have to stop the fear in, is that I've noticed that with the dogs, they don't gain weight. Because if you don't feed them starch, carbonic acid, if you don't feed them, all these, again, starches and carbohydrates that humans have made and that are unnatural, that even fatten humans, of course they're going to fatten the dogs, right? And dogs in nature, they wouldn't get fat because what nature provides wouldn't have any waste. That's what's so beautiful about good food, about pure food. I mean, this is the thing. If the dogs were eating a lot of meat for instance, let's say in a week they, I don't know, caught a buffalo or something, right? Like in a pack or something like that, right? Then I can imagine maybe for a short period of time they would gain weight. That's fine. But the thing is, the rest of the time they're losing weight, because when they're losing weight, when the digestion is kept to a minimum, that's when the healing happens. You know, that's when the regeneration happens. So this concept of humans, you know, like a mother caring for a sick child, this concept of having to feed that child, you know, you're sick, you have to get better, you have to eat. That's a modern, you know, counterintuitive, completely twisted agenda. That really, if a mother was sensitive and connected to nature, would do is fast, just like nature fasts its children when they're sick, because that's the only natural way we can stop taking in the toxins. And that's the other thing, is most of the time we're not healing, it's just because there's so many toxins being taken. And this is true for animals and humans. You know, it's so crazy how similar they are, right? So yeah, that, just remember that these dogs, they won't get fat if you don't feed them fattening food. And fattening food is man food, and man's food is responsible for disease, right? That if there was no man food, the animals would be getting healthier and healthier and healthier and stronger and better at resisting any kind of, you know, immunological deficiency. And then we have to talk about what do you call it? Antibiotics, because biotics is life, bio is life, right? So this is the thing, if you're immediately killing off all the bacteria in the system, you're messing up life, because the bacteria in the system is how life continues. It's like a checkpoint or a storage system, right? It's a septic tank, and you can't disrupt that pH balance and what's already there, because it's just a reflection of what's the processes going on in the body. So again, the natural approach is a non-interventionist approach. And so if you don't, you know, completely kill all these bacteria, then those bacteria already in there can be stronger, like the septic tank and like your kidneys. If the kidneys didn't have any bacteria, they wouldn't be able to filter. And if the kidneys don't filter, no toxins exit the body. All toxins are kept in the body, right? Unless you can get rid of some through the skin. And, you know, what do you call it? Gandhi, one of my dogs, who seems to have much more acidity inside of him than other dogs, he always is filtering. And I remember Dr. Moore saying that if there's stuff coming out of their eyes, right? In Korea, we call it numkop. That is, again, lymphatic system filtering and putting out things it doesn't need. This is one of the ways that dogs filter, since their skin, I don't think filters as much, right? But it does still filter when it needs to. When it's on the verge, of course, it has to. So there's that. So yeah, don't get afraid if the dogs look more skinny, because this is the thing. It's just like, again, vegans and what we, and the beauty standards of today, what we attribute is a good looking guy, is a guy that in Korea we call them 근육돼지, muscle pigs. You know, we think that you know, being this brutish, you know, eating all the carcass kind of guy is a healthy guy, but it's not, right? It's a guy like Bruce Lee, you know, and maybe a little bit bigger than Bruce Lee, you know, but it's guys like that who are agile and at the same time strong, because strength isn't a matter of size. I mean, of course it is to an extent, but there's a point where it's not. And the fastest way energy gets in the body is fruit, is herbs. So who's going to win long term? You know, maybe in a short term battle, perhaps, but in the long term battle, that is life, and that is the microbiome, and that is the different bacteria and the different things interacting. What's stronger is what is natural, not what is suddenly developed and suddenly fattened and all of this, right? And even if you see the cows and the horses, you know, if they're not eating a bunch of grains that day, because sometimes the humans come and feed one particular cow a big amount of grains, right? Probably to sell the cow later or whatever it is, right? If you just see the cows and the horses kind of in momentary freedom and just grazing, you see all their muscle structure in their back legs. But when you come across fatter animals that are domesticated fat animals, you don't see that muscle structure. It's just rounded, just like human beings. When I see, one thing I look for in girls is good legs, you know, and I'm not going to go for legs that are too rounded. You know, I need a little bit of definition in those legs. You see what I'm saying? So it's really simple, really. But yeah, let's see, what else is there? And yeah, another thing we can talk about is like the outer skin and all this kind of stuff. Like, for instance, shampoo. We should not be using shampoo on dogs. Even dog shampoo, I would be skeptical. I think if you absolutely need to, vinegar and baking soda, that's a good option. And then some essential oils, you can put lavender, whatever it is, right? I don't mind, you know, if it's herbs especially, I really don't mind. But my dogs don't smell. And again, they eat fish, but they don't smell, which is really weird. It makes sense that they don't smell after fruit, but even though they eat fish, they smell good, you know? And before, when I was doing cooked food, they smell 100%. And I got used to the smell. But for them, no. Like when I smell different dogs and smell them, I notice that they're an absent of smelling. And that's because, again, there's nothing dead inside of them. If there are a lot of dead things inside of you, which is fat, really, is dead energy, dead weight. That's what we call it, dead weight, right? Is waste. So they don't smell because they don't produce excess waste. And then this not producing excess waste is homeostasis, right? So yeah, when it comes to shampoo and all these products that we don't know what the chemicals we're using, I would not do it. Of course, I can't control you, and there might be a time where they roll in something or whatever it is, but yeah, I would use vinegar and baking soda, and they haven't rolled in anything since I've had them. So, and that's the other thing, is the poop eating. Until my last dog, was it Melania? For the people who don't know, I think she was still poop eating. You know, I'm not 100% sure, but there has been times where I've caught her. And these 3 dogs are not poop eating. Well, I haven't caught them recently, you know? So, and this is the other thing, is when the dogs come off from a really poor diet, oftentimes they'll have detox. And these 3 dogs, it seems like they've come out of that detox. And Gandhi, I think, is still doing it sometimes and not doing it sometimes. Like, but since I'm not doing prolonged fasts, it's not really, really big. So Gandhi, for instance, when I got him, he was unable to chew. You know, he was unable to eat basic fruits because his acidosis was so rampant. And again, the teeth issues only come from human food. One more time, from acid. You know, if there is no acid, there's no problem with the teeth. So in the same sense, Gandhi's kind of more back teeth are rotting. And so the best solution for that is again, alkaline foods and yeah, fish from time to time. When they're healing, you want to do less fish. But with Gandhi, I haven't been, you know, just because people have been concerned that I'm not feeding them enough and all these different things. But the ideal situation is you're far away from their concerns and you give them what they need. And if it's a fast, man, if something is sick, if something is wrong, a fast is what they need, really. You know, we can beat around the bush all we want, but, you know, and so I've been doing more fruit, and that's okay too. But anyhow, so with Gandhi's bad teeth, now he chews. It takes him longer. It's slower. He's not fully healed, but he's chewing. He's now eating frozen fish on his own. Yes, he may take some time, and and it gets easier and easier as the fish thaws out. But the point is he's practicing. And that's the other thing. Dogs, it's good to have bones around because that's how they brush their teeth. Because again, the bone is alkaline. So it's these things that are so key to the dog's health that, you know, again, for me, a no choice approach is a natural approach. That's why when I figure out something is more natural, I don't have a choice. I really don't have a choice. Because now that I know something is a little more natural, you know, it would be unnatural for me to go against that. And so once I see that, it's really difficult for me to regress. So, so yeah, for Gandy's teeth, he's now able to chew a lot more. So there's obviously been regeneration going on, and yeah, I would just like to keep up the trajectory, and yeah, and that kind of brings me to meats. So with meats, you don't want high fat. This high fat meat is a human development again. You know, animals in nature don't get diabetes, but animals in the zoo get diabetes. What's the common denominator, or what's the dependent variable? Or the dependent variable is humans. And it's such a good word, dependent, because they're dependent. They're dependent on someone else for their food source, right? So that means we have a responsibility to give them the foods that they would eat if they were independent. And so this is where, again, you know, dogs don't prepare their food. Any kind of preparing is foreign to the dog. And that's why, like teas and stuff, in a previous dog, again, in Melania, I did use teas because I was desperate. You know, she had this neurological sickness and I really didn't know how to target it. Now, what I would have done differently is I would have blended the raw herb or the raw sea moss into some fruit instead of cooking. But who knows, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe some level of cooked herbs is not the most horrible thing, right? Because again, they like to go for gut, like especially carnivores, they like to go for the gut when they eat other animals because there's pre-digested plant matter. And that was the idea of cooking, but I don't know if I would do that again. But if I'm put in a situation like that, I'll see what I'll do. But yeah, so again, any kind of preparation, even the cutting, like when you cut up the meat, that's when they choke, because they assume that this is a good enough size for them to swallow when they should be chewing it off slowly. So them chewing it off organically, that's all part of the process. And it's all part of the process of helping their teeth and, you know, strengthening that clenching power and stuff too, and all that stuff, all that good stuff. So yeah, less preparation, really just natural. What's natural? What's easy for me and the dog, right? Because what's easy for the dog is really what's easy for me. That's what we have to realize. So there's that. What else? Yeah, and besides all the serious talk, they're just so great. You know, they're just, you know, I still have them right now, but I can already tell what it's going to be like without them, because they're just there's so much light and there's so much energy to them. There's so much healing energy to them. And that's the other thing, is as they heal, you heal. As they heal psychologically, you're much more clear as well, because it's just amazing, you know, like just seeing nature, just seeing what's natural, just seeing the progression of that is just amazing. And that's what, again, is so beautiful in cats and dogs is, you know, even if we tamper with them, and dogs more so, even if we tamper with them, there's something about them that, you know, can't be infiltrated, that is innocent, that is something of its own, right? Like the animal spirit, you know, it's just so profound. And again, I 100% believe it, that they're guiders, that they're here for us to kind of just be a reminder, I suppose, of being in spirit and just doing what's right, doing what's instinct, right? Doing what's intuitive. And that's another thing we have to watch out for is, you know, preventing the dog from its own intuition. So yeah, that's a whole big topic we can get into. And That's why, like when I train the dogs, I do this thing called yin yang training. And the name is not important, but the point is, in the beginning, I might be in more control. In the beginning, I might ask for more order. Like I ask them to sit when we leave an entrance, and I call them out one by one or whatever it is, right? But after I leave, after we go outside with Charlie's dogs, I take them outside and I tell them to sit, wait for 12 seconds patiently, and then after those 12 seconds, then we can start walking. And what that does is allow them to realize, oh, okay, we still need to listen, but if we listen, then we'll be free, because basically we'll have done the basic minimum requirements to not disorderly leave the premise, like leave the premise in a disorderly fashion, such that there can be dog fights, there can be just energy that's not good. They could just run off into a different property and start barking at the other dogs in front of their door, different things like that, right? So so leaving with as little disorder as possible. And you don't have to get too strict in this regard, right? But after a while, and leash if necessary, especially for beginners, I make them follow me for like 5 minutes. And then after a while, I tell them to sit down, I line them up, and one by one I say, go ahead, and I release them. It's like releasing the sealed energy, But in the beginning, the sealing was so that you could control it, or you could direct it. That's a better word. And then once it's directed in a good trajectory, you release it, because it's not your energy. You know what I mean? It's the dog's energy. So, and the dog needs to run, the dog needs to explore, all of these things, because releasing that sealed energy releases an energy in you too. I've come to see this, that if I am the guardian who not only controls and guides well, but also lets go well. And letting go is not something you do, right? That's something you don't do. There's something that grows in me when I watch the dogs find out what they are, because maybe some part of them doesn't really know what they are. And that's what instinct is. It doesn't matter if they know or not, they're just going to do. And what they do is natural, So just watching the dogs find out what's natural in me in this environment, that's fantastic. So I can't wait to have an area where dogs can just run free. That's going to be fantastic. Seriously. Yeah, so there's that. I don't know if I can think of anything else right now. Let's see. I do have some notes, so I might read some and see. And I don't want them to get excited, but if I say, do you want food, or do you want to go on a walk? And I say it in a certain way, like very enticing, like, yeah, I say so energetically, they get super psyched up, and I don't want them to get energetic right now, but I'll kind of give you an example. Do you want to go for a walk, Venus? Do you want to go for a walk, Venus? And if I let her go, she'll start barking. Do you want to go for a walk? I have to take them for a walk because I've gotten them excited. Yeah, it's just like children, right? But they know, and so that's what I like to do with food is, and their barking, is I like to let them bark, but at other times, let's be quiet. So when a guy walks by my property, maybe bark once or twice, I say quiet and then done. And that's good, because I know there's someone there, and at the same time, I've stopped your unnecessary barking, right? So it's like that kind of an alarm system. But right before they eat, I like to get them energized and active, right? So I'll be like, yeah, do you want your food? Do you want food? Right? I'll say that loudly, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, she's going to give us food. And they just start going crazy. Here, maybe I'll give you an example. Do you guys want some food? Do you guys want some food? Yeah. Okay. I'm closing Venus's mouth so you can hear the others. Do you want some food, guys? Yeah? Yeah? Then did you want some? Now I entered the contract, so there's no going back. So I gave them papaya earlier, so I'm gonna give them what do you call it? Bananas. And here, I'm going to show you what I do. Maybe down here might be best. Okay, come here, guys. Back, back, Candy, back. Good. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Good. And then I like for them to wait. So Venus, slow, wait, slow. Good. Oh, they're just so eager right now. Sit down. Sit. And then another thing you can do is protect the food. Slow, 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 wait. Good, good. And the reason being you just don't want them to keep biting your hand, right? Venus, come here. Venus, come here. Venus, come here. Sit down. Close off the space. Sit down. Order in the court, you know? And I like to call their name, Frijole. So, because before they would all come in together. And so I recommend them real quick. I just give them a tap on the nose or whatever it is to say back, like not your turn, not yet. Gandhi? Good. And you do need to be a little bit tougher on the bigger guys because they're so big and they don't know their strength. You have to be a little more, what do you call it? Slow. Good, good. But just like this, real simple, and again, I would give the skin, but I don't know, since I'm still buying these, I don't know if they're pesticides or not. And again, you want to be using Dr. Sebi grade fruits, right? You want to be using Dr. Sebi's diet just because there's a higher chance there isn't starch in these foods. And starch is what's going to make them fat. Starch is what's going to give them diabetes. Starch is what's going to give them all kinds of acidosis, right? So, and what I like to do, Venus, is stand up. Venus, stand up. And let's see, with Free, I just do lay down. And then with Gandhi, whatever with it, but here, let's see. Sit down, Gandhi. Gandhi, sit. Good. Good. And then another thing I do with Venus is, so she'll like to jump up on me. Venus, come here. Venus. Venus. She's excited about food right now, but Venus, come here. Venus, come here. So yeah, so if I stand still and I come up to her,